Pokemon come in a variety of types. You've got blue, you've got red, you've got green, and sometimes Pokemon even have 2 typings, and that made me think, what if every Pokemon in the Kanto Dex had to have 2 typings? Some of them are going to be extremely easy because they already lend themselves to 2 types, however most of them you're going to have to just bear with me. But of course, it's not just about my opinion. Jump into the comments and let me know what typings you think these Pokemon should be, and while you're down there, yay or nay, pineapple on pizza. How do you feel?
I am under the water.
The order that we're going to look into these is dependent on how many monotypes are in that typing, and water is the most abundant type at 17 Pokemon. So of course we need to consider the OGs, and I think Squirtle and Wartortle should be rock type to reference the rock hard shells, and then Blastoise becomes a steel type because of them steel cannons and the fact that its shell is now harder than it was before, I guess. Psyduck and Golduck need no explanation. In fact, it's a war crime that they weren't actually made this type originally. Now with Poliwag and Poliwhirl, I could follow in Poliwrath's footsteps and go for water fighting, but I like the idea of them being water psychic because of the emphasis on hypnosis. Seal and Shelder become water and ice types for obvious reasons, and Krabby and Kingler become water ground types because they're mud crabs? Horsey and Seadra could only be dragon type, and Goldeen and Seaking are going to be normal water types because of all the Pokemon that deserve stab horde attack, I think it's them. And then to finish off the water type, Staryu is going to be water psychic to match Starmie, and then Magikarp is going to be a normal type. And no, it's not because he's a normal fish, it's because he needs to be closer to God like he deserves.
It sure is boring around here.
Kicking off the normal type, it's Rattata and Raticate, and I was going to consider normal dark because I feel like it makes the most sense, but it's already been done. Therefore, I think normal poison makes the most sense because they're rats and they play in garbage. That's it. Unfortunately, we do have the same issue with Meowth and Persian where they already have a dark counterpart, but I can't think of a type that fits them more than normal dark because of their attitude. Sue me. Lickitung is going to be a normal water type because its tongue is wet. I'm not kidding. For Chansey, I'm going to go the obvious one and say normal fairy because of its desire to help people. Kangaskhan is going to be a normal fighting because I associate it with fighting type moves like Drain Punch and Power Up Punch. Taurus is going to be a normal ground type because I can see it causing earthquakes through stampeding. Ditto is going to be a psychic type just to lend itself more towards that Mew conspiracy. Porygon is going to be normal electric, something he should have been from the start in my opinion, and Snorlax is going to be a normal poison type because of his use of stomach acid. I know it does sound weird, but you've got acid, you've got gastro acid, belch, and you've also got the immunity ability on Snorlax, so all signs seem to point towards poison. Speaking of poison, we have Ekans and Arbok, who I can only imagine being a poison dark type. Not only would Stab, Bite and Crunch make a lot of sense, but Arbok is known for its intimidation, something that I think would fit right at home with a dark type. So with the Nidos, I want to try something different, because I could just say poison ground type and then just call it a day, but let's get inventive. Nidoran male and Nidorino, I'm going to make a poison ground type to match Nidoking. But then Nidoran female, Nidorina, and even Nidoqueen, I want to make a poison fairy type. Nidoking is clearly the more popular of the two, so Nidoqueen just needs a bit of a helping hand. I feel like adding the fairy type would be a great addition because not only is it a really good typing to have, but it also makes thematical sense considering they evolve via Moonstone, something that is very closely related to a lot of fairy types. Something that definitely isn't a fairy type though is Grimer and Muck, who I'm going to call a water type because they're wet. We were doing that again. Coughing and wheezing are going to be the opposite of a poison water type and become a poison fire type. Not only can they spew out flames in the form of a fire blast, but they can just blow the fuck up. They clearly have the innate ability to ignite their gas, something that a fire type would have. It's amazing how they keep segueing into each other. Talking of fire types, we got to talk about Charmander and Charmeleon. So we could make them a fire dragon, but we would have to change Charizard into a fire dragon, something that I don't really want to do. Instead, we're going to play on the fact that Charizard is a fire flying, and we're going to call Charmander and Charmeleon a fire ground type. In terms of the foxes, Vulpix is going to be a fire normal type, and Ninetales is going to be a fire ghost type. Growlithe and Arcanine are going to gain the dragon type because they're legendary beasts, and then Ponyta and Rapidash are going to gain the normal and fairy type respectively because unicorns are kind of whimsical, you know? Okay, it's actually because a lot of you guys said that Rapidash should be fire fairy type in the previous video, and I can't disagree. Thank you for your input. Lastly, for the fire types, it's going to be Magmar, and I associate him a lot with Fire Punch, so I feel like firefighting would make a lot of sense. Something else that makes a lot of sense is for you to subscribe, because I am so close to 4K and I would really appreciate it if you could get me there. Thank you. Moving on to the fighting type, and Mankey is going to be a fighting normal, and Primeape is going to be a fighting fire. Then we move on to Machop, Machoke, and Machamp, and they're all going to be fighting rock type because, well, quite frankly, they remind me of Dwayne Johnson. Hitmonlee is going to be a fighting water type to reference that one Bruce Lee quote. Hitmonchan is going to be a fighting electric type because he's a boxer and he's going to be known for quick punches like lightning quick reflexes.
This is big brain time.
Then we move on to the psychic type, and Abra is going to be a psychic normal type, whilst Kadabra and Alakazam are psychic steel types because they have spoons. Drowsy is going to be a psychic ground type because it looks like it's been playing in mud, and Hypno is going to be a psychic dark type because it abducts children. Mewtwo is going to be a psychic dark type because he's a massive fucking edgelord, and then Mew is going to be a psychic fairy type because it's whimsical and playful.
Welcome to Earth.
Kicking off with a ground type, and it is Sandshrew and Sandslash, and it needs to be a ground normal type because this thing needs stab slash. Need I say more? Diglett and Dugtrio, what the fuck do I do with these? They can be ground rock type, I guess. That'll do. Let me know, what should they be? And then lastly, for the ground type, we have Cubone and Marowak, who is going to be a ground dark type and then a ground ghost type because it's fucking dead. The electric type leads us onto the mascot of the franchise, and it can only really be an electric fairy because it's cute and small. That's pretty much all I got for that one. And then Voltorb and Electrode are going to be electric steel types because what else would they be?
Next up is the unforgettable Pokemon Electabuzz that I didn't forget. I'm going to use the same logic I used with Magmar, another Pokemon I didn't forget. I associate Electabuzz a lot with Thunder Punch, so electric fighting makes sense to me. This use of text-to-speech AI is purely artistic and has nothing to do with the Pokemon I did or did not forget, because I'd never forget any Pokemon, especially Electabuzz. Anyway, moving on, I guess?
We're now at the point where the remaining types have 3 or fewer Pokemon in them, so we're just going to do them as one big type, just to save time, I guess. Starting off with a bug type, and Caterpie and Metapod, they can only really be bug normal type, right? Because nothing else is really going to fit. And for Pinsir, I was debating Bug Steel because of its pincers, but at the same time I think Bug Ground works better because I don't really know. Dratini and Dragonair are going to become water dragons because of their inspiration from the Imugi dragons from Korean mythology. Clefairy and Clefable are going to be fairy psychic types because space Pokemon are typically associated with psychic. The only grass type, Tangela, is going to become a normal grass type, I think, because I don't know. Lastly, we have the evolutions, and my god, what do? I think with Vaporeon and Jolteon, I want to reference their kind of signature moves. For Vaporeon, it was Acid Armor, so Water Poison makes sense, and in Jolteon, it was Pin Missile, so maybe Electric Bug makes sense. They're not making sense. Look, I'll be honest, Eevee and its 3 evolutions, I have no idea what secondary typings they would get, so this is where you need to come in. Let me know in the comments what should the secondary typings for these Pokemon be, because I am stumped. I'll be interested to see what you say. That's all I got for you though, so bye.